Welcome to the Quantum City Initiative, a show about the most important stories, ideas at the intersection of AI, cities, real estate, and the leaders shaping the future of how and where we live and work. Do you save and reinvigorate cities, or are you building new ones?
What is most critical for cities in the future with the sort of AI factory race to work? All right, welcome back. Episode 31. Episode 30 was the highest ranked in history of the show. Actually, I don't have any idea if that's true. Chase, how you doing today, man?
Doing all right. Can't complain. How you doing?
I'm okay. We got a little taste of summer this week. We're filming here right before Memorial Day. Unfortunately, the weekend's probably going to be cold and rainy, which, of course, that feels right.
Yep.
But we got a lot to talk about today. We got some Rex University. We have some more Quantum City. It was a massive news week. China opened the largest train station, 1.2 million square feet. Massive. Elon Musk taking a little company called SpaceX public. That's huge. NVIDIA earnings. We talked about AI paying the rent. Now we have the receipts for that. OpenAI, at the time of filming this, they haven't yet filed for an IPO. Rumored to be pretty soon. Big week this week.
A lot to cover.
Let's jump into the anchor story at the world's largest train station. The reason why we're talking about this, we've talked a little bit about at Strata and a handful of others, the red tape. We talk a lot about infrastructure. We talk a lot about transportation, specifically as we were running through Dubai. In last episode, we talked about the infrastructure around transportation. Well, on May 18th, Mr. Musk, who loves doom scrolling, we do know that, he shared a viral clip of China's Chongqing East Railway Station. I honestly hadn't heard of this. Prior to the tweet, prior to doing the research, put a significant amount of global attention, went viral, if you will, on the project. Let me just give you some stats here, Chase. Then let's talk a little bit about why this is important and why America seemingly is significantly behind. Okay, so the Chongqing East spans 1.2 million square meters. That's about 170 football fields, twice the size of the Vatican, 6 times the size of Grand Central. 6 times the size of Grand Central. I get nervous going into Grand Central. 6 times the size of that. That is absolutely massive. It's designed to handle 16,000 passengers per hour, or 300,000 passengers per day. 15 platforms, 29 tracks, direct metro integration. The trains go about 220 miles per hour. Us here in New England, the Acela, I barely thinks goes over like 60 without shaking and breaking. The total investment is $7.8 billion. Real quick, one more stat for you. The construction timeline, they started planning it in 2011. They broke ground in 2018. They main works finished the spring of 24. They opened to passengers in 2025. 6 years and 7 months to fully operational for a insanely large piece of infrastructure that dwarfs anything in the West. Why does this matter, Chase?
Well, I mean, for a lot of reasons. I mean, from the macro perspective, this is how societies ultimately end up winning or losing, right? So you look at how the Chinese made this happen. I forget if it was last week or the week before, where we were talking about how Dubai has done a great job of removing red tape. Mm-hmm. They're literally flying ahead with flying cars and all this stuff. And infrastructure matters. Transit's a critical piece of this. And ultimately, talent will, so long as policies and things like that align culturally, like this is going to give a big leg up to talent, and that's going to drive economic progress, and best economy wins. So from a competitive perspective, this is super impressive and very scary. I think what the Chinese did differently even than Dubai, because we talked a lot about kind of capital alignment and permitting speed and those things in Dubai, but apparently the Chinese did this with a kind of LIDAR guided robot army that can work 3 times faster than humans.
Okay.
And you just like compare this to, they built it on like, I think it's kind of in a mountainous region. I believe it's hot.
Hmm.
And they had these robots just cranking, building what's a serious piece of infrastructure. And take our local hometown, when we did the Green Line extension in the Boston area, I think it was only 4.7 miles and it took
Yep.
17 years. And that was after the first contractor blew up. I mean, you're not going to win. Like you're just purely, you're not even competitive on the field. I mean, I think we talked about before the show, but even more embarrassing is the 100+ billion committed to California high speed rail. And I don't think they've broke ground yet. Is that true?
Yeah, and then if you compare New York City, so we had some readers reach out saying we're not optimistic on Boston. We've been dumping on Boston a little bit. Fine, we get to do
Yeah.
that. It's our hometown, but
Take,
that's also the
take
Boston
my
mentality.
Green Line anecdote. Why
Yeah,
would
exactly. So the Green Line ain't though. We're not even going to talk about the Big Dig. 25 years.
you?
I mean, come on. Like, let's be honest. But let's compare New York. Okay, so same sort of note of comparison here. New York's, for all intents and purposes, I guess a larger city than Boston. Some would say 10 years of construction 10 years of construction for the Second Avenue subway phase one for 1.8 miles of tunnel and 3 stations. And
Yeah.
that costs $5 billion. That's $2.5 billion per mile. It's just insanity the rate at which we build here in the States and the rate in which the rest of the world builds. To me, obviously, this administration is working on the sort of macroeconomic trends, making sure the States is continued to be the sort of the best country, firepower, nation, whatever it may be. But until we figure out this infrastructure build, I don't think we can truly. I think the talent might start to shift. I don't think we can truly be the best, certainly not the best cities with this. You're talking 7 years in China to build this massive railway station, and we can't build a mile of Green Line extension in less than 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's a, our, if you think about our governance structure through the lens of, let's say, like technology product development, the way I would describe it is we've essentially fallen out of market fit, right? Because these very small constituencies, along with the right politicians, can block things that are necessary for societies and civilization to move forward. So that's like a huge cultural problem. And then if you decide you are going to build something, and whether it's the contractors, the people who are responsible for building it, show me the incentive, I'll show you the behavior. So much of their time and energy is just on surviving the regulatory gauntlet rather than delivery. And when you have misalignment on those incentives and small groups of people essentially having outsized influence, that's where you get into the cost problems because it's delayed. There's a ton of cost to just get through the non-work part to get to the work part. And it's just waste, fraud, and abuse, like flat out. And this is, people got, I have a Doge t-shirt and a bunch of people got angry that I had a Doge t-shirt. And it's like, take off your political blinders. Like, this should not be a partisan issue. The idea of modernizing our governing system for societal efficiency should certainly be supported by both parties.
So it's not. I mean, my follow up question to you was: is it a money problem? No. The projects here in the States, Boston, New York, multi billions. Is it a politics problem? Is it a cultural problem? Is it a societal problem? It kind of drills down to politics and the government.
I think it's leading and lagging. So it's leading with cultural and political, and then it becomes a money problem down the line.
When will We just rattled off a bunch of stats. This show is not as culturally important as other podcasts, yet still culturally important. When will we wake up? When will we wake up to this delay or these infrastructure issues? The conversation again we hosted at Strata with Travis Kalanick in particular, who talks about why he decides specifically not to build a lot of what he's doing with ghost kitchens in the States, how he chooses to build them abroad because it's that much easier. Why haven't we woken up to this? Or have we woken up and we just can't get it done? I mean, I think that's your waste, fraud, and abuse comment.
I mean, again, I think it's a incentive issue. I think the
But
hundreds,
there's so much money here. What incentive do you speak to? There's billions of dollars. What other incentive do people need?
but I think that's it. Like there is such a bloated administrative kind of body. I wouldn't even say it's purely government because there's this whole private ecosystem around the regulatory things that reinforces it. And I don't really see, I think you see essentially two trends happening where you have like a state like California, where so much of the incentive is to get paid through ultimately ways that are not going to deliver the outcome and the ROI.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see kind of another movement of people voting with their feet and going to places with, lower regulatory burden and what I would say is like more free market forces. And I think this can be a dangerous path because at some point each side has much different incentive structures. And so there's already, I think, conflict, right? But if you're in a state like Texas where you can kind of build anything, I've been reading a lot about the Texas permitting system and all of this. Mm-hmm. There's very little regulation, and all these people who are saying like it's the Wild West and all that, it's really not. It's not like anarchy. But at some point, those people are not going to want to pay for the $100 billion rail station if the federal government starts giving federal money to these things. People certainly weren't happy with the Big Dig, which was funded federally. So I don't know. I think it's a real cultural issue.
And I think the reason why we keep harping on this, and we'll move on to Rex U and some commercial anecdotes, is I still fundamentally, if we talk about artificial intelligence changing commercial real estate, we talk about the energy demands. When it comes down to infrastructure, sure, power, energy, all of that, to me, the transit issues that every city is dealing with right now with regards to getting people in and out of their place of work, in and out of their offices, is one of the biggest issues we have with sort of high interest rates, whatever it may be. I think the commercial landscape that we have today. I think transit is absolutely insanely important. It's a force multiplier for cities that get it right, and we just don't seem to be getting it right here.
For sure not.
For sure not. Let's talk about Rex U, the numbers behind tenant churn. Okay, we talk about real estate experience. There's segments Rex U University. Pretty good. I think the name we could get a workshop it a little bit. Mm-hmm. The most expensive event in a CRE portfolio is what? It's not default. It's not the bank taking the keys back. It's not really vacancy if nobody was in there. It's a lease expiration surprise. It's a lease expiry you didn't see coming. Why is that the most expensive, Chase?
Well, it's upstream of all the other things you talked about. Your defaults and things like that come if you're not occupied. So it's not just the loss of the customer. It's downtime in terms of revenue and the discounted cash flow, right? So you're getting dinged in a lot of different ways, and the industry still doesn't totally seem to have I see a little bit of the well, like in more and more conversations, as people's bonuses and all this are obviously tied to the business plan. But from a skill perspective, it seems to be a real skill issue where the concept and idea of measuring customer signals the day they sign the lease, not what's the absolute closest to lease expiry that I can start to pay attention to, just get like, it's a mindset shift that seems to break people's brains in commercial real estate.
Yeah, it's the surprise. To me, it's the surprise, right? I mean, listen, we've operated in technology, we've operated in SaaS for a while. Standard SaaS metrics. You could even go into cohort analysis. You can go into gross revenue retention. You can go to net revenue retention. You can go to customer health score. You can go to net promoter score. I mean, we are constantly measuring the health of our customers, right? Because when you think about any sort of good financial model, you need to be able to benchmark the health of these customers for your renewals and whatnot. For whatever reason, commercial real estate didn't really pick up on those signals. We've talked about this a bunch. You and I have been the names of the signatories on the lease. Well, when we get to 36, 24, 18 months out, our phones ring. Hey, how you guys doing? Are you expanding? Is business going well? Is it bad? What do you think about the new space? All of that information, the utilization of the product is there. So why can't they measure it? Why can't they measure it? Or what has prevented them from measuring it today?
I mean, nothing's preventing them. The technology exists. It's purely look, we talk a lot about incentive alignment. So I'll use a local example where capital providers are not active in their investment. And I know of a building in Boston where the asset manager, part of where the alignment comes in, and they do asset and property management, where the alignment comes in is they have an equity stake in the building. And they sold their equity stake and just flat out essentially stopped caring about the asset, yet they still manage it. They have the PM contract, which is typically a percent of the gross rent. So you would assume there's some incentive alignment there. But if you're doing the absolute bare minimum and you don't really view that from a margin perspective as a big piece of your portfolio, then it's all about like, let's do as little as possible to keep the contract and make a little money. And they don't have the incentive to the higher level equity outcome. So I think there's some incentive issues, but even where there are incentive issues, you still have this kind of stubbornness of like, well, the tenants want to be left alone. Well, the tenants want to be left alone in the old construct of, hey, we're a landlord and you're lucky to be in our building, rather than reframing around like, what's the value and what's the definition of success at a building? And how can we be a true partner on the way that they work, talent, attraction, and retention, and things like that. And there just has been very little movement on this, which is where I've kind of come to the point of like, all right, there needs to be change management and reskilling and all these things. I'm starting to believe that what you're going to see is people from other industries, particularly the technology industry, that are interested in real estate are going to be creating new types of commercial real estate companies where they just learn kind of the bricks and sticks portion of the business. I'd say there's two kind of critical components of commercial real estate for outsiders. You do actually have to understand the product, right? You have to understand construction. You need to understand architecture. You need to understand building systems, all that stuff. So you need to understand that piece of it. And then from a finance perspective, I think it's made to be much more complicated by the people in the business than it actually is. Like the amount of time that asset managers spend on scenario building and updating, rather than if they spent that kind of analytical rigor on what type of data signals can we get upstream to actually impact the scenarios, rather than just modeling scenarios. Like you're gonna find alpha in that.
And it's not even like you're trying to find the canary in the coal mine or the needle in the haystack. Like you're talking about
Well,
4 drivers. Like let's distill it down and simplify it a little bit. You're talking about maybe 4 drivers here of non-renewal that we talk about quite a bit. Perceived indifference from the landlord, tenants who feel unknown to their property team, right? I like to be known. We're Boston guys, so we like cheers, right? I forget the tagline of where somebody knows your name or something like that. As a song that's go. Everybody knows your name. Service failures without follow through. So the failure itself, rarely the breaking point, right? We deal with that. The absence of follow through. Again, this comes down to the perceived indifference as well. Space to work mode misalignment. We've talked about this a ton. The way people work has changed. The way offices need to be outfitted has changed. Lobbies need to be changed. It's not just golf pods and ping pong tables and roof decks. There's a time and a place for those. There's misalignment there. And then there's low engagement with the building ecosystem. Are people attending events? Are they using the amenities? Are they swiping in? Are they badging in? This isn't rocket science. I guess that's what's the most troubling thing for me is this isn't really the needle in the haystack. So when you think about the inputs into their discounted cash flows or into their models, there's only a couple of data points really that they can focus on that they're just missing.
Yeah, and some of it's just like basic CRM information. And some of it is signals off of systems that they already have in place. Like again, it's it's not hard. It's just you got to do it. So I really anyone that listens that is um, coming from another industry where these things are like very obvious. If you're interested in commercial real estate, it's a really good time to start a company.
Do you think we talk a lot about obviously AI and artificial intelligence and productivity boosts and the tools that are there, and we'll talk a little bit more about NVIDIA and so on later on in the show. Do you think that's the accelerant that's needed here? And sort of the one anecdote I have is we talk about this, right? We sell pieces of technology to commercial real estate, and we talk about the best and worst thing about commercial real estate is that it moves relatively slow. We talk about sort of long change management cycles with commercial real estate, slower to adopt technology. To me, just in a handful of anecdotes, I think with a lot of the CRE execs and the folks that we're talking to now, they're actually quicker to adopt or they're adopting AI at a faster rate than I would have assumed. Do you agree with that perception? And do you think we're going to see commercial real estate as a whole sort of move away from the Luddite phase, maybe?
Uh,
Oof,
I,
no.
I still think it's going to come from outsiders from what I'm
Yeah.
seeing. I think there's a lot of talking. And look, you and I went through the experiential cycle. How much did people talk about tenant experience and how much did people do about tenant experience? There are certain platforms like Hines is one we've talked about. They really are in a lot of ways walking the walk, not talking the talk. But there's far fewer examples of that than one would expect when I think part of this too is they tend to commercial real estate and you see this a lot rather than thinking like a lot of other businesses do, which is, hey, what's my strategic competency and focus area? Where it would be like a technology company and you can see the rigid focus, maybe almost too rigid from Apple, where it's like, hey, we know what our competencies are. And just because the wind's blowing a different direction, like we're not going to take our eye off the ball. Capital can move from office to multi to retail to mixed use to lab to this, that. And they kind of just chase the capital rather than like, what's my competency? And within that asset class, how do we need to evolve to continue to stay there? I do think you see that from certain groups like Hines and other folks. You obviously see it with Alexandria in lab life science, right? So it's because it's an investment asset class within alts, there's just different like corporate strategic thinking than I think in other areas.
I am I think we're going to be surprised at some of the CRE leadership, some of the REITs. I think they're going to adopt AI faster than, certainly not as fast as the tech companies that are out there, but I think they're going to lead the way. And the reason for that, I think, is constraint and high interest rates. are going to force them to adopt technology faster than they ever have in the past, because commercial real estate, again, was a coupon clipping business. It was the best investment to be in. Now there's a significant amount of pressure. I think that pressure will create, we talked about the K curve last week, but it will create an environment where they must adopt technology at a faster rate. And I think we're going to be surprised.
Well, I think you might see some of that again, back to incentives, metrics, and all these things. It's funny. You can tell what business they're in, right? They talk about the most important metric for a lot of these groups is AUM. And
Right.
if the money is moving to a different area, then if you're chasing AUM, then you need to move into a different area. No one talks about how many like not one website has a number of satisfied tenants. Shouldn't AUM follow that, right? Like who the paying customer of the solution, right? Isn't that the indicator?
Because, okay, so here's my point to that as I'm thinking about assets under management. The best tenants are computers, man. That's where all the AUM is going right now, is data centers and cold storage and all of that, and industrial, and selling these offices or renting to massive leases to Amazon. So I guess, why subject yourself to unhappy tenants when computers can sit there?
Show me how many satisfied GPUs you got.
Satisfied GPUs could be something. Now you're on to that. Your assets under management is a good point. We've seen commercial holdings and office holdings shrink over the years, certainly. Take LBA, for example. A couple of years ago, they all but exited. Take JBG, sort of all but exit. I mean, they had it, but it wasn't a massive focus area for them. They were all focused on industrial and data centers and whatnot. But now you're seeing them swing back. So to your point, they're raising funds, right, or their REITs, and they're putting more capital to work in office and in commercial. So yeah, why not have a customer health score? Why not have happy tenants?
Yeah,
happy tenants like to follow other happy tenants,
yeah.
right?
Industry wide, it's a top down business model rather than a bottoms up. So it's okay.
Yeah.
We need to get the investor money. We need to chase yield and whatever
Yep.
yield and return we've talked about. How do we get that right now? Right? Because they think despite being slow, they actually think in shorter cycles rather than how do I build a compounding platform over time. The way you do that is going to be from the operating metrics up, right?
Mhm.
But I don't know. I've been talking about this to people in commercial real estate for a long time. So I'm kind of giving up on that. And I'm talking to people in technology because commercial real estate, I think one of the biggest moats in commercial real estate is that commercial real estate people are like, oh, it's super complicated. It's really not. It's really not that complicated. Like, yeah, you got to learn a bunch of stuff, but it's no different than life science or tech or whatever other industries. So I think there's a big
Yeah.
opportunity.
CRE companies need to operate more like tech companies. I don't understand why they don't. Even the notion of calling a company a tech company now
Does make sense.
seems outdated. Obviously, all companies use tech. At least I hope they do. And commercial real estate could use more. Okay, let's go to the quantum review this week. We talked about Dubai last week. We just spent a little bit of time kicking off the show on the Chongqing Railway. You mentioned Texas. I'm glad you did. Let's talk about Houston for a bit. They just had a wonderful week. Record exports, booming port traffic, new AI manufacturing investments, fueling an industrial surge. Quick background primer for you, man, before I let you opine and give us some additional facts on Houston. It's the fourth largest U.S. city by population, largest metro with no zoning code. Port Houston, I didn't know this, handles the largest tonnage of U.S. foreign waterborne traffic in the country and is the number one U.S. port for petrochemical exports. Interesting. Texas Medical
You
Center.
watch Landman?
No, I haven't watched Landman.
The times.
I know. I need to, and I think there's a really funny quote about in Landman about talking about being buffalo sober or something like that, where they were talking about, he's like, yeah, just whatever that is, but that gets memed around. So I'll watch Landman. The Texas Medical Center is the world's largest medical complex. HQO customer, shout out, employing 120,000 people. It's the energy capital of the world. It's now repositioning as an energy transition AI power capital of the world. NRG, Calpi, and Vistra all headquartered there. You've been to Houston a few times. We got a couple other customers. You mentioned Hines. Where do they stand? You wrote the book on the QCI, you developed the scorecard. Where's Houston stand?
As I think about it, they have no zoning code, right? They can just build, which is awesome. So I think when you think about like um, the freedom component of it, I think they do very well there. I believe they have more housing per capita than any city. The median rent is lower than the other Texas cities. Like they do a pretty good job on those vectors. I think where their economy, which I believe the economy is over 700 billion, which just to peg that for listeners, like that's bigger than Switzerland, right? And it's heavily dependent on energy. It's heavily dependent on kind of petrochemical, and it's really energy transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're doing pretty well. And I think they're out ahead on AI infrastructure because of obviously of red tape. I think their issue is they don't have, I mean, it's a driving metro, which is a lot of Texas,
Transportation.
right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
sprawl. They don't really have other forms of transit, but the sprawl definitely kind of drags them down a little bit. Um, so I think that's like one of the issues. And they've got, to your point about Texas Medical, I believe, and I don't have recent information on this. I remember when we first went down there and checked out Texas Med, but something at the time, I think it was like the eighth or ninth largest economic zone alone in
Mm-hmm.
the country. So when you think about like the quantum city being all about from a GDP perspective, they've got like a quantum district, right? So it's also, I think a lot of people don't understand the culture of Houston. It's got a really cool culture. So there's like a little bit of the Southern Bayou kind of New Orleans thing, not quite the same.
You don't hear about Houston. That was gonna be my next question for you was like when you think about Texas or when you hear about Texas, right? What do you hear? Austin, right? Maybe Dallas. Dallas is great. You hear about Austin all the time. You don't hear about Houston a ton, and yet we have is phone ringing, dude. Phone's ringing. It doesn't sound like their phone, dude.
Dude,
We're
I gotta
filming
say,
a show.
tell my wife I'm shooting the pot. Just
So why doesn't Houston come up more? Right? We dug a little bit for this, but then once you start looking at Houston, the metrics are there for this being an absolute talent attraction city. Obviously, a massive economic zone. You talked a little bit about the no zoning. Why don't you hear about Houston? Is it well, you were talking a little bit about cultural, but what is it? Is it that it's too big? Is it that there's too many transit issues? You got to drive everywhere? Was it flooding? What is it?
I think it's mostly misconception from people who haven't been. I think the culture is cool. I think there's a little bit more of a music and arts culture than people are aware of. It is really good. You don't hear about the food, but they've
Huh?
definitely got like that mix of Cajun, and then they've got some barbecue. Like
Ooh,
it's kind of got some things going on. So, and they're obviously like pretty strong from a sports perspective.
the Houston Oilers, right?
It's too bad that, I mean, the name the Texans is literally, that'd be us being like, yeah, we're the Boston, Massachusetts.
Right.
Dude,
Terrible.
why is your state your name?
Right.
They should bring back the Oilers. Like the world
Let's
needs.
bring back the Oilers.
I don't know
Embrace it.
why they got pushed out of that. So, yeah, I'm super bullish on Houston.
All right. Love to hear that. Shout out to our friends at Heinz and a handful of folks that we know down there. Big fans. Big fans, Houston. Okay, let's jump to my favorite portion of the show. Of course, quick hits, because I haven't seen ADD, so I'd love to just ramble on about the news. Well, last week we talked about the Silicon trade being back up. We back up. Jensen hopped on Air Force One, went to China. We talked a little bit about the world following NVIDIA. Everybody was watching NVIDIA's earnings earlier this week. Well, they certainly didn't disappoint. I mean, these numbers are outrageous. I mean, maybe it's because we're little old HQO, but these numbers are absolutely massive. NVIDIA reported Q1 fiscal year 27 results earlier this week. Record revenue of 80, almost 82 billion, 81.6 billion, up 85% year over year. I mean, you think about that, right? Where we talk about startups and sort of technology companies a lot. When you think about 85% revenue growth, north of 100% revenue growth. We'll talk a little bit about Anthropic later. You think about the law of small numbers. You're talking about 85% year over year with revenues of 82 billion.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy because their projections also don't have Chinese sales factored in because they
Right.
hadn't gotten that trip down in time. And I believe we got to fact check this. But I believe the dividend 25x in one quarter.
Oh, I didn't look at that. Interesting.
Yeah, we need to look that up, but I heard that, which is crazy. And I mean, truly, the way that commercial real estate needs to think about this is like, I think for NVIDIA, data center grew 92%. It's growing faster than the company.
Yep.
And I mean, I made the joke about satisfied GPUs, but like at this point, AI is a rent paying tenant. So I like this like mega, actually don't take our idea. We want to do this, but I keep talking about how mixed use is going to expand from retail just for people to everybody should be a data center. It makes no sense not to be.
Love that. Everybody should be. Stop fighting it. Stop fighting
Well, and
it.
if you make it smaller, people will stop fighting it. They won't even know about it. It's fine.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I don't want it in my backyard. I want it in my backyard. We talked about this. Put a data center in my backyard. Backyard's not big
Dude,
enough, but
Boston,
we'll make it small.
basement. Like
Every single Blackwell shipped lands in a building. Like you said, the data center business in NVIDIA is growing faster than the core business alone. This is a commercial real estate conglomerate right here. NVIDIA is a commercial real estate conglomerate. They're not just building chips.
right.
They're powering commercial real estate. It's truly incredible to watch this company.
Totally. And their CEO is the best. He's just humble, super smart. I mean, anyone who hasn't listened to his interviews at like Stanford, and for folks that are interested in just how differently certain tech companies run, Ben Horowitz went on of A16Z, went on Brian Halligan's podcast the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how at NVIDIA, Jensen has 60 something direct reports. He does not believe in hierarchy and bureaucracy. So he's got massive amount of direct reports, and he does not do one-on-ones. Anything he says to one person, he says to everybody in front of the group. So radical transparency. He's a fascinating guy, and you got to read or listen to his story about just how many times they almost died in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, talk about grit.
Well, it's for video games.
Yeah. Yep.
Does it? It's a video game company. Or chips. Sorry. Yeah. Insane. What a story. Speaking of what a story and just massive numbers, SpaceX just filed publicly for the largest IPO in history. The SpaceX X1 is massive, and there's, again, insane numbers here. SpaceX is not just a rocket company. The most fascinating elements of this was looking at just candidly some of the numbers, what's inside SpaceX, right? You have Starlink, you have X.AI, you have their data center business. And we talked about this deal a while ago, the sort of Elon Musk Anthropic deal, the SpaceX Anthropic deal, where they're renting out Colossus 1 and I believe part of Colossus 2. Now we know the numbers behind it, and it is wild. Anthropic is paying SpaceX $1.25 billion per month through May of 2029 as part of the compute deal. How did this come about? What did Elon get right here to be able to generate $1.25 billion a month renting one of your Colossus data centers, your compute power, to another one of the fastest growing companies on the planet right now, Anthropic?
Well, the word, and I forget where I heard this, but the word was he was socializing and doing what he does out on in the capital markets. He's kind of socializing the SpaceX, what would be coming out in the S1. And obviously it's a once in a lifetime company, but I think the only place they were getting dinged was they built Colossus in Tennessee, and obviously it's a strategic asset, but just purely from the P&L, XAI is not being adopted to necessarily warrant all of the Colossus compute. And flip of a switch, Elon finds a solution. Obviously, his number one adversary, even though I don't really think he likes Dario over at Anthropic that much. But he certainly doesn't dislike him as much as he dislikes Sam Altman, who has compute constraint. Well, Anthropic hasn't put the money into data center like OpenAI has, and they're surging from a usage perspective. So goes over to him, cuts a deal, 1.25 bill a month. Remember that tiny little blemish in the grand scheme of things within the financials? Yeah, I took care of it. I think they've got all their circles squared. And this is, I mean, to your point, it's essentially it's a infrastructure company when you think about what they're doing with Colossus and AI infrastructure and all of that, that also just happens to have rockets. Like,
it's internet business.
These guys are a real estate business. This is what
real estate.
Like, if commercial real estate doesn't wake up, these companies are going to be pressed for growth in new areas. And I would be super nervous about if Elon were to like suddenly care, because he's not going to be like, cool, I'm going to think about construction and development and asset management and property management and brokerage and blah, 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 as these like siloed disparate things where the answer is like, oh, well, they've always been separate and it sounds kind of hard to bring them together. Like, if you think about verticalizing this, and if a mind like that comes into it, like, whoa, right?
They're a massive commercial real estate company. Same with NVIDIA. We talked about this. Did you look this up? It's not in the show notes. You might have found it. And we joke about this sort of stuff. This was memed quite a bit. Do you know the TAM that Goldman came up with for SpaceX?
No, I did not look at the notes.
28.5 trillion TAM.
Unbelievable.
And within that TAM is,
I would have loved to hear the conversation with Elon being like, not TAM, like, hey, we pegged your TAM at whatever. It feels small.
Feels small. 28.5 trillion. To your point about commercial real estate, SpaceX is going to be one of the largest commercial real estate companies on the planet, and then not on the planet, because obviously we know what SpaceX is trying to do. SpaceX, one of the largest commercial real estate companies, not on this planet, is a beauty. The other thing that's crazy about this IPO is that traditionally IPOs, the initial shares and the share price have been reserved for the banks, right? That's always kind of been a knock, right? The retail investors don't get to take advantage of the pop. Not with Mr. Musk. Mr. Musk is a man of the people, apparently, and he's allowing individuals through Robinhood and a handful of others, I forget, I believe it's Fidelity and sort of all the large brokerage institutions, to purchase SpaceX shares, retail shares, just like one of the large banks. What could go wrong here with that? I mean, it sounds good. What could go wrong here with that?
I don't know.
Please.
I think we're over protectionary. Buyer beware.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I think we're the coddling. Oh, this isn't like a angel investment. I mean, I think SpaceX, so long as you can endure a hold period of 3 to 5 years, like, you're in the money, in my opinion. Not investment advice.
None. We don't have any. Continuing on the public markets, OpenAI. I mean, I'm watching Twitter or X, one of Mr. Musk's companies. They are rumored to file ASAP, today, tomorrow, whenever.
They need to.
And they want to do it before Anthropic. They reported, Wall Street Journal reported that confidentially, we could see it as soon as today, which is Friday, May 22nd, as the time of filming this. Maybe when you guys are listening to the show, it might be out. It's expected to happen. Fine, IPO, whatever, speculation, all that stuff, whatever. Why is this important, Chase? Could potential and Anthropic's rumored to be going public this year too. There's a handful of other not as large IPOs this year. Why is the IPO window being open and this massive influx of capital to the public markets? Well, why is this good for the market or just for commercial real estate too?
I mean, it's being opened specifically for AI leaders. So, I forget what the Wall Street Journal had some cheeky, like the mega mini IPO boom or something where it's like 3 companies, but mega capital. I think what would be best for everybody is clearly SpaceX is going to get out. But I think what would be best for everybody is that OpenAI goes next, because I think if they go third, it's not going to be good for them. I think Anthropic's going to, at this moment in time, just is going to look better from a growth curve trajectory. And if OpenAI can get out, then Anthropic will price off of OpenAI. But I'd like to see the competition kind of stay well capitalized. And they got the Elon lawsuit out of the way. They won on a legal technicality that he waited too long to go after them for the for-profit conversion. So hopefully they get out. Altman is an absolute maestro with the capital markets. So he's also got a lot of people that are kind of dependent on OpenAI's success. So hopefully they get out and raise, because I think Anthropic's numbers will probably speak for themselves.
Yeah, and they are. The leaking of the numbers, it's just bananas. You're talking about triple-digit growth for all these companies. They're close to triple-digit growth, and they're not law of small numbers. These are law of big numbers. It's absolutely insanity. Something about Anthropic expecting 11 billion in revenue in a quarter, over 100% growth. It's just mind-boggling. But I get it. It's all we talk about. It's all we use nowadays, right? I was asking, which I don't use ChatGPT all that much anymore, but ChatGPT pops up earlier on my phone screen than Claude does. But I was talking to ChatGPT this morning about my fertilizer routine for my lawn. I want green lawns, which is interesting because I use Claude predominantly for work. That's it, right? I don't do much of the personal stuff, but ChatGPT and we're still on that friendship game. We talk about lawns and green lawns.
For stuff like that, I've moved over to Google's AI.
Gemini?
It's just whatever's right there in search. It's gotten much better.
You're a Google guy instead of a Microsoft guy? OpenAI? No?
Seem to be.
Interesting. Couple more quick hits before we go. We're coming up on an hour. Blackstone and Google launched a $25 billion AI cloud JV to take on NVIDIA. Just Q massive AUM company investing more in partnership with Google to sort of go after the AI race. It's all about compute power. This is not going to be the only one that we're going to see. We're going to continue to see this nonstop. All of the massive AUM companies, the asset managers out there, and so on, are going to be investing in power, compute power. We talked about that. Follow the power. Maybe not follow the money, follow the power.
Yeah, Blackstone's announced a lot of deals. They announced obviously the investment into data center in Michigan, and this is really kind of competitive shot at CoreWeave to loosen that NVIDIA stranglehold. So it's going to be compute as a service infrastructure with Google. I bet we get at least one, maybe 2 more deals out of BX before the end of the quarter.
All right. Clock's ticking. Months left in the quarter. A lot of action, a lot of numbers. One more bit of news this week. I don't have a lot of pop culture news this week. Do you want to talk about basketball? Do you want to talk about basketball and why the arena is so important to the quantum city, to the specific city that it's in? Or do we just ramble and talk about your hair again for the last 2-3 minutes of the show? What do you want to talk about?
It's painful to talk about the hoops with the Celtics being such a disappointment, but I do, from a cultural perspective, I believe this was the first time Madison Square Garden had a Eastern Conference Finals game since, what was it? What's the note say? 1999. Unbelievable.
Pre-Y2K.
Yeah. In the thick of it. They never recovered, man. So stadium is cultural infrastructure. MSG was apparently rocking. And even as a Celtics fan, man, I love Jalen Brunson. That guy's the man.
Gets the people going. I was reading a story about Dan Gilbert, who is the Quicken founder, owns Bedrock Detroit. He was busing folks. He's the owner of the Cavaliers. And I forget the number of buses. It was like 200 or something buses. He was busing people into Detroit.
Love that.
Now his is a win-win for him. He owns the Cavs and he owns most of Detroit. So it's just wild. Yeah. But anyway, so that's good. Hey, new segment this week. Don't know if you caught this.
No.
Look ahead. We're looking ahead. Usually we look behind. We're operating the rearview mirror, talking about earnings, talking about stuff that already happened. So we like to opine about. Now we're going to talk about the future. Hey, this is kind of good news for Boston. I'm skeptical, candidly. Anytime I see like Tech Week, I get like nervous that it's just not going to be a hit. But man, I will say, Andreessen, and a lot of companies here in Boston, we talked a little bit about Boston and Whoop putting the city of Boston on its back. Well, Boston's first Tech Week in a while, or it says first ever, but I don't know if that's true, but it's presented by Andreessen, is coming up next week. Lot of buzz in the city about this. Almost 600 events,
Wow.
80 plus founding hosts, a lot of tracks. And then New York follows right after this, June 1st to 7th. What's your take on this, man?
Well, I'm speaking at it.
Oh, la-di-da, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sweet. Sounds great. So you're psyched, or is it going to be bad?
I don't know. I was actually kind of surprised, but I can't say no to our show friends, James Robert Scott at MIT and Mint K at Goodwin Proctor. So I think there's like a prop tech track Thursday at, you've been to the beautiful Goodwin office over in the Seaport.
Love it there.
Yeah. So I'm speaking, so I'll report back on how Tech Week was.
I think it's a good thing. I think we need more of this. I hate the idea of calling it Tech Week. It sounds gross. Gives me the chills.
It's per week, man. What's your beef?
Tech Week? Like we're gonna just do Tech Week? Branding
So
sucks.
It shouldn't end. Like you shouldn't be like,
well, we just use tech this week, or like the only week we're using tech, or we're done doing it. I can't stand it. I'm allergic to Tech Week. The fact that Tech Week's going to New York. Love
the strong reaction.
It's disgusting. I think the branding is horrible. I'm psyched about it. I think there's a lot of amazing people doing great things.
Roller coaster
in Boston. I can't stand the name. It's horrible. It's deterring me from going. Oh, are you going to a Tech Week event? Gross. But if you talk about all the individuals doing amazing work, Google, IBM, Stripe, Goodwin, MIT, JPM, the FinTech Sandbox, Whoop's doing a ton. Ryan Durkin doing an insane amount with the Mass AI Coalition at this. Disgusting. Hate the name Tech Week. We'll end on that.
Wow.
What?
Noted.
Yeah, don't call it that. You know what? And you know what? Free advice, or I don't have the advice yet. I'll come up. I'll talk to Claude. I'll talk to Claude later, and I'll come up with a new branding. Claude and I will come up with new branding for Tech Week. And you know what it is? Tech 2 weeks.
8-minute ads.
What's better than 1 week of tech? 2 weeks of tech.
Good. You nailed it. Can't beat that.
What a show. Thanks for coming out. Talked SpaceX IPO. Talked NVIDIA's insane law of large numbers. Talked massive infrastructure everywhere here but the States, except for Houston. Houston seems to be doing it right. Talked about some of the issues behind tenant churn, and talked a little basketball, and more importantly, why branding Tech Week is not ideal. But shout out to everybody who's doing amazing things next week, and check out the pod.
Thanks for coming out.